Karen screamed at the top of her lungs as officers stepped between her and Middag Rex. She insisted he was a dangerous stray, but when the officer called Rex by name, and he responded with a trained salute, Karen went pale. The officer stood up slowly and said with a calm but firm tone, "You just reported a reader K9. Congratulations, help me back up and tell you how we gather." After years of dedicated service to the Riverside Police Department, Rex and I moved into what I thought would be peaceful HOA neighborhood in Maple Grove. Rex had served 7 years as a K9 officer, detecting drugs, tracking suspects, and protecting his human partners. Now he deserved a quiet retirement filled with belly rubs and afternoon naps. He was calm, disciplined, and beloved by everyone who met him. Well, almost everyone. The day we moved in and noticed Karen peed on watching from her window across the street as HOA president, she made it her business to know everything about everyone within hours. She was at my door with a stack of HOA bylaws and a fake smile. She went through every rule with an authoritative voice, emphasizing the pet regulation. So dogs must be leashed at all times when outside, even on private property. No excessive barking, no aggressive breeds, and nodded politely and assured her Rex was well trained. The problem started the next morning. Rex and I were on our front porch enjoying coffee when Karen marched over. She said with an accusatory tone, "That dog needs to be on a leash." I explained he was on my property and perfectly trained, but she cut me off. Her rules apply to all common areas and visible spaces. Leash him or face fines. Rex, sensing the tension, remained perfectly still, his training kicking in automatically. Within a week, I received my first written complaint. Violation of Article for Section 3 regarding unleashed animals. The second complaint came 3 days later. Dog observed exhibiting menacing behavior toward residents. This was lawful. Rex had been sitting on our porch, watching butterflies. The menacing behavior was him yawning. I tried reasoning with Karen. At the next home meeting, I explained Rex's background and training, even showing his retirement certificate from the police department. Dismissed it with a condescending tone, saying past employment doesn't exempt anyone from current rules. The other board members seemed uncomfortable. Lute stayed silent under her glare. Things escalated when I caught Karen taking photos through my fence one afternoon. Rex was in the backyard playing with his favorite tennis ball. When I asked what she was doing, she said in a defensive voice that she was documenting violations for the HOA records. Installed security cameras that night. Sensing this was far from over, the next morning animal control showed up at Midway. The officer looked embarrassed. Ash explained someone had reported a dangerous dog at this address. I invited him and showed him Rex's documentation, introduced them. Rex performed his trained downstate command perfectly. The officer laughed and said he wished all dogs were this well behaved. He left with an apology and a warning that false reports were a crime. But Karen wasn't done till weeks later while I was at the grocery store. She called 911 according to her frantic call, which I later heard in court. My vicious dog had lunged at a child and was roaming the neighborhood, and as she claimed in a history canvas that there was blood everywhere and the child was traumatized. That dispatcher, trained to handle emergencies, immediately sent multiple units. The first responders arrived with lights and sirens ready for a dangerous situation. Iller learned from the dispatch record sheet Karen had described Rex as a massive pit bull type dog with aggressive tendencies. She claimed she had witnessed him break through his fence and chase a young boy down the street. The 911 operator had classified it as a level-only animal attack in progress. What they found was Rex sleeping on the porch, his favorite stuffed duck under his palm. My neighbor Mer Thompson had been watching him while I was out. He told the officers with an incredulous tone that Rex hadn't moved in 2 hours, except to change his sleeping positions. The alleged child, Karen claimed, was attacked, nowhere to be found. When I returned home to find police cars in my driveway, my heart sank. But Officer Jana Morrison, who responded to the call, recognized Rex immediately. Tellish said with excitement in her voice, "Rex is that you boy?" She had worked with him on several drug busts. Years ago, Rex's tail wagged as he recognized her shin. I showed the officers my security footage from that afternoon. That stamp clearly showed Rex never left the porch. There was no child in sight during the time. Karen claimed the incident occurred. Officer Morrison's expression hardened as she reviewed the evidence. She said in a serious tone that filing a false police report was a crime, especially one targeting a retired law enforcement K-9. That's when I made the call that changed everything. I contacted Detective Roy Sullivan at Rex's old precinct within an hour. He arrived with Sergeant Lisa Park from the K-9 unit. They both knew Rex well and were furious about the situation. Detective Sullivan said with barely controlled anger that Rex had saved his life during a drug raid in 2019. This dog is a hero, not a threat. They confronted Karen in her house. While I watched from my porch, even from across the street, I could see her face go from indignant to terrified as they explained the seriousness of her actions. She stammered excuses, claiming she didn't know about Rex's background. Sergeant Park reminded her that ignorance wasn't an excuse for harassment and filing false reports. The officers filed their own report, a booth incident documenting Karen's pattern of harassment against a retired Polycheck 9. They also discovered this wasn't her first time making false complaints. She had a history of calling 911 on neighbors for minor infractions. Wasting valuable emergency resources, I hired attorney David Lawson, who specialized in harassment cases. When he heard about Rex's service record and saw my documentation of Karen's behavior, he said with confidence, "This is one of the clearest cases of harassment and defamation I've seen." We filed a lawsuit for defamation, harassment, and emotional distress. The story spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. Neighbors who had suffered under Karen's reign of horror finally spoke up. Mr. Thompson reveled she had tried to fine him for having the wrong shade of beige on his mailbox. The Andersons shared how she measured their grass with a ruler and sued violations for being a quarter-inch too long. The Garcia told us about time she called the police on their 10-year-old daughter's lemonade stand for operating without an HOA permit. Even more stories emerged during depositions. We learned Karen had created a secret Facebook group called Maple Grove HOA Violations, where she posted photos off neighbors' properties with nasty comments. She had nicknamed residents, calling meth dog felon and Mr. Thompson the Biga Bandit. The group had over 50 posts about Rex alone, each more unhinged than Felist. During the pre-trial hearing, Karen's lawyer tried to argue she was just enforcing HOA rules. But when the judge saw the security footage, heard the 911 recording, and reviewed Rex's service record, his expression grew stern. He said with authority that using emergency services to harass a decorated Polish dog and his handler was not just inappropriate but criminal. Karen was charged with filing a false police report and misuse of emergency services. Trial was swift. The prosecution pressed evidence of her pattern of harassment, the false reports, and the damage to my reputation. They Evan Brown and Rex's former partners to testify about his character and service. When Rex entered the courtroom wearing his old police vest for demonstration purposes, several jurors smiled. He performed basic commands flawlessly, showing the level of training and discipline Karen had called dangerous. And juror later said she was amazed by his composure and couldn't believe Yoni would see him as a threat. Karen took the stand in her own defense, but other testimony was a disaster. She contradicted herself multiple times, claimed she felt threatened despite having no evidence, and admitted she never actually saw Rex approach any child. When asked why she called 911 instead of animal control, she said with a flustered tone that she wanted immediate action. The verdict came back in our favor on all counts. Karen was found guilty of filing a false police report and harassment. The judge ordered her to pay $15,000 in damages, perform 100 hours of community service at the local animal shelter, and issue a written public apology to both Rex and me that would be published in the neighborhood note. But the best part came during the HOA emergency meeting the following week. The board voted unanimously to remove Karen from her position as president. As the votes were counted, she sat in stunned silence, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. When the finale was announced, she burst into tears and ran from the room, screaming that would all regret this. Her removal had immediate consequences, as HOA President Karen had given herself a monthly stipend of $500 for administrative duties. She also lost access to the whole legal fund she had been using to threaten neighbors with frivolous lowits. But most devastating for her was the loss of power. For 5 years she had ruled our neighborhood like a petty dictator, and now she was just another resident. The criminal penalties hit even harder. For filing a false police report and misuse of 911 services, Karen received 6 months probation and a $5,000 fine. When the judge read the sentence, such gasped and said in a shaking voice, "But I was just trying to protect the neighborhood." The judge responded firmly that she had wasted emergency resources and targeted an American hero. Her face crumpled as the reality of a criminal record sank.